Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily with Ray Flowers, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to use the promo code FSD20 for a 20% discount on the products over at fantasyguru.com. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily. I am your host, Ray Flowers. Thanks for choosing to spend some time with me today. Really appreciate it. Monday through Friday at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We are here. We're rocking and rolling on Fantasy Sports Daily. Again, Ray Flowers here. You probably know that already. You can find my work at fantasyguru.com. You probably know that already. You can find me on the interwebs, on the social media, Threads, Twitter X, Instagram, at the Ray Flowers. You probably know that already. What you may not know is what we're doing today. So let's get right into it. We're going to do some news updates, hitters, pitchers, kind of go around. Some guys that are looking likely for opening day. Some guys that maybe are going to miss opening day now based upon the way the calendar is playing out. We'll dive in more directly to the Shohei Ohtani situation. A lot of people obviously having questions about it. I spoke about it yesterday. I guess I didn't do a good enough job. People wanted more information. So we'll update with the latest information we have on the Shohei Ohtani situation. It's not much, but we'll get into it a little bit here. We'll also talk about the Washington Nationals, our final team, as we do our complete roundup of Major League Baseball, hitting on every team, 5 players, and then an up and down player with the group. So we'll do that. We're also going to get Fantasy Gurus, Race Guru Thunder Hour host, Rich Mileto. You've heard him on the show previously talking NASCAR and football. He's going to join us today, talk a little bit of NASCAR, preview the weekend as well. So a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and hopefully a lot of fun the rest of the way. So that's the show plan for today. Don't forget to use that promo code FSD20, FSD20, to sign up for all the products at fantasyguru.com, including the baseball package. Get in there, get over there, get it done. You still got time. It's draft weekend. We'll be updating the draft book today, so that'll be done too. If you're using the draft book, please read the intro to the article. Also, please watch the video. I explain the draft book in a little bit more detail so that you can hopefully use it properly if indeed you are going to use it. The rankings continue to be updated every day at fantasyguru.com. Ready to rock and roll this weekend to help you out while you're doing those drafts. If you want to get involved with us there, again, promo code FSD20. Sign up for the all-in package. You get MMA, soccer, racing. Talk to Rich Mileto in about a half hour. NHL, NBA, all of it. You get it all in one single package. You get the DFS and the wagering for the whole thing. So check it out that way. The football package, again, $19.99 for off-season franchise mode. That's all the reviews of the trade market. That's early rankings for 2024. That's the previews of the guys, the college player profiles, guys that are going to be drafted, all of that as well. The March Madness guide is up. If you want to get involved, you can still do that there. Help with the wagering aspect and all that, even though the tournament itself is already started. You can obviously get involved there. And then for the baseball side of things, we've been doing this. Let me check out the page right now. It's rtsports.com/fantasyguru-baseball. rtsports/fantasyguru-baseball. Right now, we've got a series of 5 home run derbies that are posted. Those we'll have more. I'm in 4 different best ball leagues that are drafting right now. One of them's about ready to conclude. We'll continue to add leagues there. If you want to take myself on right now, you can sign up for a home run derby with Rob Brink, MLB model, who came on and talked futures. There's a home run derby with me. Phil Backert, Sandro Anello are 2 producers at SiriusXM, have openings, as well as Scott Bonder. So you can sign up right now. There's promo codes on the page. There's discount codes on the page. You can even get in $10 to do these as a starting point. We've gone the low level. So get involved with this over there. Okay, let's get to it. Let's talk a little bit of news and notes in baseball. And we'll start out with the Shohei Ohtani situation. As of right now, okay, and this can obviously change, but as of right now, what we know is the following. Shohei Ohtani is not expected to be disciplined because he is not believed to have bet on baseball. That's what you need to know at the top. Now, this can change, right? There's wide latitude in Major League Baseball with the commissioner's office. If something, even if it doesn't rise to the level of legality, the commissioner can do things. An article by Rosenthal and McCullough over at The Athletic has a bunch of quotes and bits of information. So I'm basically taking all this from the article, but again, from McCullough and Rosenthal. So here we go. Ipe Mizuhara told ESPN, and by the way, he makes $300,000 to $500,000 a year. So he makes a good salary to be the translator buddy of Ohtani, $300,000 to $500,000 a year over the last 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is. He told ESPN that he told ESPN contradictory stories. And that's kind of the problem here. And that's what's leading to a lot of the conspiracy theorists. That's what's leading to a lot of people to be worried about, should I take Ohtani in the first round? Is he going to get suspended? So let's dive into it. According to the official story today, Mizuhara, I should probably say Mizuhara, excuse me, is being accused of $4.5 million of gambling debts. Now, again, this guy's making $300,000 to $500,000 and he's got $4.5 million of gambling debt. Might have a problem. Just saying. And it's not just gambling debt. It's not that he owes FanDuel or DraftKings this money. It's an illegal bookmaker, which adds another level because now there's illegality involved for him, right? Because he's doing a bookie thing in the back alley. MLB officials have officially declined to give statements. Okay. Unofficially, they don't think Ohtani's involved, and that's kind of what they're saying right now. So there's questions about, well, how deep is Major League Baseball going to investigate this? I mean, Ohtani is the face of the sport, really, especially worldwide, right? Currently, he's not expected to face any discipline. Okay. But Mizuhara changed his story, and this is the problem. And here's the two things he said. First of all, why did he change his story? Is it to cover Ohtani? Did he misspeak? Is he someone's untrustworthy? Well, maybe, since he supposedly has all this money in debt. But here's what we got. One, did Ohtani wire the money, $4.5 million, or give the money to his buddy to cover these gambling debts? Okay. Again, we're not saying Ohtani placed the bets. We're not saying Ohtani had anything to do with it. But did Ohtani send the money to Mizuhara to cover his debt because he's his friend? Okay. That's kind of the first story we got. Now, the second story we got is that Ohtani had no idea about the gambling debts at all. They're 180 degree different, right? It's yes or no. It's A or B. It's light or dark. It's one or the other, right? They don't go together. So Mizuhara has changed his story. Now, the positive thing is, if we believe him, and I don't know if we can, he's claiming all along that Ohtani hasn't gambled once. Major League Baseball apparently has no data to suggest Ohtani has gambled once. Mizuhara told ESPN that he bet on soccer, NBA, and NFL, and college football. And he did not bet on baseball because he was aware that you couldn't bet on baseball. Because the Rule 21 states you can't bet on baseball, right? That's the Pete Rose thing. So that's what we know right now. Could more information come out? Yes. Could Ohtani end up being suspended? Possibly. We don't know. Could this be catastrophic? If Ohtani was the one that was doing the gambling, his career is over. So there is a huge outcome potential here. Based upon everything we know right now, and this is why I haven't changed the rankings at fantasyguru.com. I'm assuming he's going to play a full season this year, and that's that. Now, if you don't believe that, I can't say you're wrong. I don't have the data to disprove you, right? I can only tell you what I know now. And if this story changes next week, and it was found out that Ohtani was involved in this, and he's done for the season, and his career's over, well, then, so there is that. And I equate it to this, and I haven't said this officially, so I'm saying it officially here. I equate this to drafting a pitcher in the first or second round. It's the same. You're taking the same shot. If you're the kind of person that takes a pitcher in the first or second round, I don't know why you wouldn't take Ohtani. People have asked me, well, Ray, are you worried about this affecting him mentally? Because this is a big. I can say this. I don't know. But I do know that Barry Bonds, and I saw this firsthand, Barry Bonds was involved with the PED allegations and Balco and all of that. And Barry Bonds went out and still was the greatest hitter the world's ever seen. Through all of that, it didn't matter. It didn't change his performance at all. He could lock in when he was playing the game, and it didn't matter what was happening away from the field. I don't know with Ohtani. Does he hit 250 with 19 runs this year because mentally he just can't focus? I don't know. I'm going to assume he's fine. So that's where I'm at right now. That's my thought on this right now. I can't, again, tell you you're wrong if you have a different thought or you want to go in a different direction. That's where I am at the moment. You can always let me know in Discord what your thoughts are as well. Okay, let's do some news and notes around the league. Akil Baddoo was sent to the minors. I don't know if that matters to anyone in a mixed league, but AL only leaguers, that's disappointing because obviously he's got a speed component. Nick Castellanos has really struggled. He's dropped his average to 143 in spring after going over 4 yesterday. Does it matter? With Castellanos, I'm going to say it doesn't. For the majority of players, unless they're fighting for a job, spring performances, we talked about Wyatt Langford the other day. He's been the best hitter, going, right? He could start and hit 212 in April. There's not necessarily carryover. Guys are working on things in spring. You're not always facing the number one starter for a team, obviously. So there's a lot of moving pieces there. When you're Castellanos and you got a decade of performance, I'm not concerned. I'm not changing the rankings because he struggled here for a couple of weeks in spring. Gunnar Henderson is going to play shortstop this season for the Orioles. This is interesting. He's going to play shortstop. It seems like Jordan Westburg is going to play third base. Is Jackson Holiday going to make this team and be their second baseman? They've got Jorge Mateo and Ramon Urias, who are veterans, who guys that, they have much less roster flexibility because of these guys. They can't send them down. They could release them. They could trade them, but they haven't done either of those, obviously, to this point. Both Urias and Mateo are making the team. So there is a spot for Jackson Holiday. He can still make this team and be their second baseman. At the same time, it's still not a certainty, despite all the good that we have seen. Just kind of updating you for the story on all of that. Okay. Danny Jansen's got his wrist issue. We've talked about that. We profiled Alejandro Kirk and the Blue Jays yesterday. He hopes to return from that wrist issue, Jansen, this weekend. He's going to start the season on the injured list with a small fracture. Doesn't sound like it's a long-term thing. He's planning to return at some point in April. He's progressing. We'll see how the throwing goes on the weekend. Eloy Jimenez, and it was funny, someone on the Discord said, Ray, Eloy's already hurt. And I'm like, yeah, shocker. Eloy's always hurt. I mean, it's a Giancarlo Stanton thing. He's got a bruised foot. Jimenez, he's listed as day-to-day. It's not an issue that should send him to the injured list. It's not an issue that should cause him to miss 3 months. Just another issue. And, he's been killing it in spring. He's got 12 RBIs hitting over 350 in spring. Looks good. Mentally focused. Everyone's got a lot of nice things to say about where he's at, and he's got a bruised foot again. Yeah, if you're following this and you're not watching me live, you're wondering what the silence was. It was me shaking my shoulders, shrugging my shoulders, I guess. And by the way, you can obviously follow us on YouTube at youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork. Go to fantasyguru.com, click the Elite Plus tab in the toolbar, and that'll bring up all of our podcasts. And then, of course, Spotify, Google, Pandora, Apple iTunes. Just type in Fantasy Sports Daily there as well. The Giants have a shortstop situation. Marco Luciano is supposed to be a shortstop who hits 30 home runs a year. Now, as he's aged, there's been some concern whether he'll stay at shortstop. His hit tool has come into question. He's taken longer to develop and hasn't quite developed as expected and hoped. He still could hit 30 home runs in the big leagues, but he might be looking at a Paul DeYoung, but better kind of career. You know what I mean? So he's hitting 243 with 29 home runs. That's kind of the hope at this point. The Giants went out and brought in Nick Ahmed just to have a veteran guy at shortstop. Luciano still hasn't been named the shortstop. We kind of lost all this with the Blake Snell and Matt Chapman, all the news, the excitement with those kind of things with the Giants. But, if Ahmed Luciano can't beat out Ahmed, Ahmed's a fine player and he's better defensively than Luciano. But that's, the Giants haven't had a lot of success with their young players. By the way, I'm going to take a sip of water. Casey Schmidt just got sent down. He started great last year and then tanked. He was sent down. Joey Bart is completely flamed out. Luciano was supposed to be their number one hitting prospect. He's not got it done. So they haven't necessarily developed guys the last 5 or 6 years very well. We'll hope for the Giants' sake that changes soon. JD Martinez signed a contract last night with the Mets. He wanted $20 million. I believe he turned down an offer for $14 million. He ended up signing for a $12 million deal. I think only $4.5 million of it's being paid. The rest is deferred, the new thing in Major League Baseball. But the bottom line is 1 year, $12 million for JD Martinez to go to the Mets. Strong signing for the Mets. JD Martinez has got holes in his game, and he's not the hitter he was 5 years ago. But he still had 30 home runs last year. Still hit 270 last year. He'll go in and likely hit cleanup. It'll probably be Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso, and then JD Martinez. That's a pretty good foursome right there. It gives lineup protection to Alonso if you believe that to be a thing. Those top 4 guys should be really effective. Really, that's a really good foursome to start out your offense with. So JD Martinez, he's been bumped up in the rankings because now we have a team for him. So make sure you check that out as you head into the drafts this weekend. Only DH eligible, but there's easily a belief that, let's say, he hits 255 with 29 home runs, right? I think last year's numbers are kind of top end for him. Could he do that again? No, he could. He's a very good offensive player, just doesn't have the dynamic nature that he used to have. The manager of the Astros, Joe Espada, told reporters that Kyle Tucker might hit third this year. This is really intriguing. Kyle Tucker spent a lot of time hitting fifth, sixth. That's just kind of how it's gone with the Astros the last couple of years. Even with all the success Tucker's had, they're thinking of switching things up. So we're thinking of having Yordan Alvarez second, Kyle Tucker third, Alex Bregman fourth. Woo! Yeah, right? So this is obviously good news for Tucker. Tucker, who's roundly going in the top 7 picks in drafts, doesn't change his outlook appreciably for drafts purposes, but it does make you feel better about the counting category numbers to see him up there and get him a few extra plate appearances, which doesn't hurt either. Austin Wells has had a really good spring for the Yankees. Now he's improved his defense behind the plate. He's hitting 340 with a 400 on base percentage and a 600 slugging percentage. Jose Trevino is there, but Austin Wells is, starting to move up the rankings. I have seen people take him as a second catcher in 15-team mixed leagues. It's not crazy. He's certainly trending up, and his strong spring portends well for the rest of the season here, or for the season, I should say, in 2024. All right, let's talk some pitching. And remember, 15 minutes or so here, we're going to talk some NASCAR with Rich Mileto. Shane Baz has progressed to facing hitters, or at least he will on Saturday. The hope is, as he returns from the elbow issue, that Baz will be back mid-May for the Rays, something like that. He's hitting all the signposts here, and it's good news. He's moving in the right direction. Mid-May, maybe he gets 23 starts. I'm throwing a number out there. If he gets 20 plus starts this year, which certainly seems like a possibility at this point, and he is the talent, or he's able to display the talent and harness the talent that everyone knows he possesses. And let's not forget, Shane Baz is supposed to be a front end of the rotation guy, or 1 or 2 at the big league level. Like, he's really talented. He could be their next Tyler Glasnow. Let's hope he has more health than Tyler Glasnow has had. But Shane Baz is a name to dream on if you've got IL spots, and you'll see this reflected in the ADP. If you've got IL spots, Shane Baz is someone to consider rostering and then just replacing him, the first fab run, because he's got a tremendous amount of talent. David Bednar, who's dealing with the lat issue, is moving in the right direction. He's missed a couple of weeks. The lat issue at this point in time, the Pirates are expressing optimism that he'll be available for opening day, and that's kind of what we've been assuming all along. So good news there. He's made steady progress since the injury kind of popped up a little bit on him. Matt Brash was interesting. Matt Brash was someone that I spoke of and wrote of glowingly coming into the season, thinking, yeah, this is the guy we want to draft, right? In the 23rd round of a draft, bang, Matt Brash. Then he had the arm issue with his elbow. And we heard from Ryan Divish, I believe, if I'm wrong on this, I'm sorry, but I think it was him that he broke the story that his season could be over, like surgery, and it's potentially catastrophic. Everything's been backed off since then. All the tests and everything they run have been much more positive for Brash. So he's throwing a bullpen now. He threw 20 pitches, nothing fancy pants, but he's hitting everything. I guess there's still a possibility with Brash that, when he cranks things up and really lets it rip, that his arm doesn't respond well. But it sounds very possible that early in the season, he'll be working high leverage innings for the team from Seattle. Walker Buehler officially placed on the injured list. So if you're worried about that heading into, Fab this weekend, if your league is running, and make sure you check that, because a lot of leagues are running their first waiver wire, if you have it once a week, this weekend versus next weekend, because we already had the games, obviously, in Korea. Because the Dodgers were playing, they had to put Buehler on the IL. So if you didn't notice that, he's been placed on the IL, so you'll be able to IL him, then make the move to add someone else for your pitching staff or whatever position you need. The hope is late April at this point. And again, I've talked about this a lot with Walker Buehler. This is the longest recovery from Tommy John surgery we have seen for a guy who's reportedly had no setbacks. Guys, about 10% of people that have Tommy John surgery, it just doesn't work. Like, there's a belief it's 100%. It's not. Okay, so there's a percentage of pitchers that have Tommy John surgery, just that never works. There's a percentage of guys that come back quickly. Some of them struggle. There's a whole, calendar. Some guys are back in 10 months. Some guys are back in 20 months, right? Buehler was going to pitch in the playoffs last year, and he's still not ready to start this season. And you can be cautious, which the Dodgers are being. It's fine. But, if we've learned anything, let's be honest about this. If your arm's going to go, your arm's going to go. Some guys have had 2 Tommy John surgeries. Some guys have had 3 Tommy John surgeries. So I'm still very hopeful that we get a good season out of Walker Buehler. I think the caution that the Dodgers have shown puts him in position to have that success. Let's hope he's back in late April for the Dodgers. Roansy Contreras, who has a big arm, who has struggled at the big league level consistently, he will be moved to the bullpen by the Pirates. They'll hope that his power stuff plays up in the bullpen. Has not worked out as a starting pitcher. They made that announcement yesterday. Kyle Finnegan, who's been dealing with some back tightness for almost a week and a half, returned yesterday. Didn't pitch very well in terms of the results, but he was out there on the hill. He's trending toward being active and available for the Nationals on opening day. Many updates here with the Blue Jays. So let's start out with the first one. Bowden Francis has made the starting rotation to begin the year, the youngster. Why? Kevin Gausman is coming back from a shoulder issue. The team has consistently said their hope is that he will miss 1 to 2 starts and return to the team. So there's an open spot in the rotation there. He's going to throw 60, 65 pitches on Monday. Based on how he racks there, they'll have a much firmer timeline. Hopefully we'll know before the season begins, but it sounds like I'm going to say 2 times through the rotation, Gausman's not going to be available. He might end up on the injured list to start the year. He might not. It depends how the timing works out there. Alek Manoah's got a shoulder issue. He's going to face, I don't know if this matters, but he's going to face hitters today. We'll get an update on where he's at physically, coming back from the shoulder wonkiness that he's been dealing with. Wish Manoah well. We've talked about him a lot. Wish him well, but at this point, you just have to write him off. And if things are different, then you pick him up off the waiver wire when things are different. But don't draft Alek Manoah. Jordan Romano. No one's panicking with Jordan Romano, but he still isn't throwing. Okay, he's got the elbow issue. They've run tests. They say structurally things are okay. Something to keep in mind that the closer of the Blue Jays, who's a 30-save guy, still not throwing. So let's keep an eye the next couple of days. If you're drafting this weekend, totally fair to bump him down a couple of spots. Again, no one is saying catastrophic. No one is saying significant. But an elbow issue with the pitcher, you have to take seriously. His mate in the bullpen, Eric Swanson, he played catch yesterday. Now, playing catch, what does that mean? Yeah, right? Like you can play catch with your neighbor in the street. That's not exactly letting it rip for a major league pitcher. But positive news, he's dealing with the forearm issue. He also could start the season on the injured list. He also is not said to be in a catastrophic situation. But, this can change quickly. And if it does change quickly, Yimi Garcia, who no one is drafting unless you're in a Solds league. Even then, you may not be drafting him. Yimi Garcia could open the year as the closer for the Blue Jays. And if he does, it's likely, for 2 weeks and that kind of thing. But something to think about if you're in a very deep league, if you're in a dynasty league and he's sitting on the waiver wire, Yimi Garcia is at least a name to know. Sonny Gray will not pitch today because of weather. This pushes back things for him. Now, while the Reds initially said he's not going to start the season on the injured list, he might now start the season on the injured list because we're pushing back his work prepping to get there, right? And I've mentioned this previously here on the podcast. To me, it's very strange that all these guys show up to camp and they just can't throw. Like, how are we talking about guys still throwing? Blake Snell shows up for the Giants. He's at 60 pitches. What are you doing? The season starts in 10 days. What are you doing? How are you only up to 60 pitches? So anyway, Sonny Gray is coming back from the hamstring issue. He has a reason to be a little delayed because he is not 100% physically. Keep an eye on that one. There is the potential now he starts on the injured list. This does not change. It's not like he had a setback of any kind, But because of the delay here and the inability for him to pitch today because of the weather, we have to consider the possibility that, that costs him 5 more days and, we'll see. Okay. Update on the Royals rotation. I don't know if this matters to anybody. Yeah. Okay. Jordan Lyles is going to start in the bullpen. Alec Marsh is going to start in the rotation. AL only. You care. Mixed league. You don't care. Okay. Anyway. Okay. So Nick Lodolo. Now this one you really should care about. He's got great stuff. We talked about him last year. Didn't happen because of health. We talked about him this year. It hasn't happened because of health. He's going to make 2 starts at AAA. And then debut on the 10th of April for the Reds. That's the expectation. This is great news because there's been all that talk about his leg and where is he at physically. The expectation is he's starting for the Reds on April 10th. Okay, so you draft Lodolo, you get someone else off the waiver wire when they IL him, you get someone else off the waiver wire for a couple of outings. And then we turn things over to Nick Lodolo, who can be one of the most dominant strikeout arms in baseball for a starting pitcher. Wade Miley was scratched from his start yesterday due to groin tightness. Robert Gasser, was the guy that could fill his role, and there's a lot of excitement of Gasser, a young guy, probably their top pitching prospect. Aaron Ashby's there too, but Gasser's right there with him. Gasser went out and pitched poorly yesterday, but there's a chance that Wade Miley's not ready to go at the start of the season. Who's counting on him in mixed leagues? Nobody. Would you rush to add Robert Gasser if Miley was IL'd? I mean, you could because of his talent and where he's going to be one day, but he's a young pitcher. And, Wade Miley is effective. And once Wade Miley's healthy, he goes back into the rotation. So something to think about. Gregory Santos is going to undergo an MRI because of his lat situation. He's still not throwing, so his start to the season is delayed. So what could have been, Munoz, Brash, and Santos with the Mariners, this great trio of power right-handed arms. Brash is not going to be there at the opening day. Santos is not going to be there on opening day, barring something crazy. So they'll have to mix and match things together. Guys like Gabe Spear will have to get it done to start the season because they're going to be a little bit behind in the bullpen. And then finally, before we talk to Rich Mileto and do some NASCAR, Kodai Senga is hoping to return in late May from that shoulder issue. He's going to throw about a week. He's going to start throwing. They've kind of pushed back the original timeline. They said 3 to 4 weeks of nothing, and then we'll start to ramp things up. They added another week to that. This is obviously what happens a lot with injuries. We talk about it all the time. We hear 3 to 4 weeks. We think it's 3 to 4 weeks. It could be 2 weeks. It could be 6 weeks, right? So the bottom line is with Senga that all the tests they've run say, okay, he's progressing just a little slower than they anticipated. The expectation, again, is a return in May. I think if that happens, given where we're at at the time the injury occurred, if he's actually back in May, that's a win for the Mets. Remember, if we discussed this previously, the issue with the scapula and all that, if he has a setback here, it's not indicative of surgery going to be necessary. But what it is indicative of is they're going to have to shut him down. Okay, so that's the concern here. That's why the Mets are being so cautious. If they ramp him up and he has any kind of setback, they have to stop him again, right? It's not like we can, you're throwing 80%, throw 70%. They have to stop him again. So that's something to think about. We're looking at, again, late May as the target for the return of Kodai Senga. We'll talk a little bit more baseball at the end. So if you want to talk baseball, don't freak out. We're not leaving baseball. We're going to do the Nationals at the end of the show here to finish up our team preview of what's going on around the horn with Major League Baseball squads. But what we're going to do now is we're going to talk a little NASCAR. And we're going to talk with the fella that you've seen on the show, talking a little, rubbing his racing, as well as talking a little football. You see him all the time in Discord. He's answering questions all the time. And he's also one of the two hosts with Sean Engel of the Race Guru Thunder Hour that you can find on the website and obviously at YouTube at youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork. And that's our buddy, Rich Mileto. Rich, how you doing today, my friend?
Good, Ray. How are you? It's Friday. I'm enjoying some of the baseball news. I tell you what, it sounds like a disaster over there. The 60 pitches before, 10 days before opening day. Wow, I'm with you. I'm not sure what people are doing, I guess.
Yeah, it's like, and I get it. And the funny thing that I always talk about, Rich, is, back when we were young, guys would show up to camp and kind of be out of shape.
Yep.
And they'd use camp to get in shape. And then, game one started and they were throwing 100 pitches. Like now the guys train year round and they show up to camp and they can't throw 70 pitches. It's such a confusing. It's like everyone has got this rigorous scientific program in a spreadsheet. Day one, you do this. Day two, you do this. Day three, you do this. And they just don't deviate from that. And it's wild to me because these fat guys, when we were kids, were out there throwing 230 innings, and now these guys can't throw 130. It's crazy.
What was the old John Kruk quote? I'm not an athlete. I'm a baseball player. What was
yeah. That works, right?
Is that right?
Yeah.
No, but hey, I appreciate you having me on to talk racing, man. I guess I get to do it all the time now, but hey, let's talk some NASCAR.
Yeah, it's Race Guru Thunder Hour with Rich and Sean Engel, and that's every Thursday that comes out, right, Rich?
Yeah, we record typically on Thursdays, depending on how long it takes to upload. Sometimes it'll drop Friday morning, but Sean's been trying hard to get it up Thursday night, kind of in tandem with my overview article that typically drops Thursday night as well.
Okay, remember, you can get all this information if you sign up for the All-In package. Where's the All-In package? There's the All-In package. You sign up for the All-In package, and you get racing, you get NBA, you get NHL, you get all those sports there, MMA, golf. all as one package. You don't have to use them all, but you get them all. So why not utilize all of them? You get the DFS and the wagering of all of them. So go to the website, click that Join Now tab in the top right column. Also click on the links below us, depending upon where you're seeing this, and you can get access to all the work that guys like Rich Mileto do for the racing side of things. Let's dive into this, and we're going to kind of, I think, ideally make this kind of a weekly thing here.
Okay.
We'll see. Schedules change and all that, but we're gonna get Rich on frequently here. NASCAR is heading to the Circuit of the Americas. Is that an F1 track?
It is.
So how does that impact things here? We're not just making right turns the whole way around, or what's going on, or left turns?
You're right there. You hit on the nail on the head with the joke, right? Everyone talks about, this is NASCAR. We don't just turn left, right? Yeah. NASCAR's always done a handful of road races going way back, right? We used to race out at Riverside, which I think is not far from your neck of the woods. Mm-hmm. The track no longer exists to my knowledge, but it's been a road racing thing. You're spot on about Circuit of the Americas. It was purposely built for F1 to bring an F1 Grand Prix race to America. In fact, it was the first United States purposely built track for F1. So it's designed for F1 racing, which, those cars are quite a bit lighter, bigger tires, completely different handling, faster acceleration. That track's designed for that. So it's a little unique for NASCAR. It's not a perfect setup, but yes, we are going to be turning left and right this weekend. And hey, it fits some driver skill sets better than others. Not everybody, most of these guys grew up spending years and years either racing on dirt or pavement, turning left. That's what they did. So, we went from 2 to 3 races at most a year to now we're at 5 this year. I think NASCAR's kind of found the balance. There was a big push to do more road racing a handful of years ago, and I think they've found a decent balance now.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me because it's like NASCAR is very similar to golf in that the track, the course, plays a huge part of this. Like, the stadium you go to play baseball, the wall's 375 or 385. We don't change our expectation with the hitter, right? But in golf, it's a long course, it's a short course, it's a par 3 course. In racing, it's this or that. The course matters so much. And you mentioned in your article, road course ringers. What are we talking about here? There's, I guess, guys that you're looking at and thinking they could really take advantage of this course.
So because NASCAR has always, been about sponsorship and money and everything else, we've seen numerous teams where they share rides. We bring up younger drivers, mix them in with older drivers, and kind of do a mix match. It's not to equate it to football. It's kind of like, we joke with the college coaches, when you have 2 quarterbacks, starting quarterbacks, you really don't have any. It's kind of the same thing. NASCAR kind of does the same thing where they change out drivers. This goes way back. You want to win money and things like that. So some of these teams, especially lower level teams, would go out and look for, we affectionately call them road race ringers or road course ringers. And what they are is just drivers that have a extensive background racing on road courses versus racing on ovals. A perfect example of this is Boris Said. We'll get to see Boris Said later this year. He's getting up there. I think he's 60 now, but he's been around the sport a long time. He's done a lot of sports car racing, which of course is left and right hand turns. He has taught virtually half, 3/4 or more of that garage in NASCAR and how to drive road courses. And it's because he has a skill set specifically for the left and right turns, the elevation changes, shift points, the different footwork, all these things that go into road racing. So it's been a fairly common thing over the years to bring in guys from other series. We've seen guys out of Canada, we've seen sports car racers, we've seen Indy car racers, and we're getting that this week. Marco Andretti, you may have heard that name before. He's racing in the truck series this weekend in a one-off event. Shane von Gisbergen, that was a name that was real popular last year at the Chicago Street Race, had never been in a NASCAR Cup race, has all this Australian Super 8 experience, dominant over there, won championships, comes over here. We're racing on the road course or the street course there in Chicago in the rain, and he wins. Not overly shocking. The guy has a good skill set, and these cars overlap a lot with IMSA and some of these Super 8 cars. So there's a little more overlap with these guys coming from other series. I mean, we could go way back, Ray. When I was a kid and you were a kid, AJ Foyt, Mario Andretti, they went from open wheel racing to Stock car. In fact, they're the only two drivers to both have won the Indy 500 and the Daytona 500. And we'll probably never see that again unless someone like a Kyle Busch or a Kyle Larson, who's trying to do the double here in a month or so, does it again. So, this is very unique. It's basically just an affectionate term to nickname the guys that don't normally race NASCAR, that have a lot of road racing experience coming over and racing in NASCAR.
It's so interesting to me because I hear you talk about that, and I think that if you're involved in this, what you're saying makes all the sense in the world. If you're like me or maybe some of the listeners, it sounds like, oh my God, like this is in baseball we talk about the minor leagues and how does the stadium play and how does a guy ride a bus. You're talking about open cars and closed car. Like you think from the outside you're driving a car, but it's not that. They handle differently. The speeds are different. The tracks are different, and it's fascinating to see how. You have to understand, like, there's a lot that you have to take in here as an analyst. It's not batter versus pitcher, right? It's not,
right.
It's not what's the goalie? Can he cover the 5-hole? Do they got to shoot glove side? Like, this is really complicated. Do you find yourself struggling? And I'm just a general question, Rich. Do you find yourself struggling to attract people sometimes to the NASCAR and racing because of that? Because people think I thought this was really simple, and man, it's actually a little more complicated than I thought.
Yes and no. Right. From a gambling DFS standpoint, I think the biggest challenge is you use golf. And I think golf is a perfect example. It's very wide open. Like, we can sit here and talk about Scotty Scheffler all we want, but there's no guarantee he's going to win, even if he's playing the best golf of his career right now. Mm-hmm. Racing's a lot of the same thing. There have been numerous times where, man, we've got the top 5, top 10 peg. We've told you exactly how it's going to go. There's a late caution, someone blows a tire, something weird happens, and now all of a sudden everything's flipped up on its head. And it's heartbreaking to watch folks in Discord because they're watching their scores and their lineups, and to see something happen out of the blue that goes from, wow, I was winning $5,000 to now I'm not winning anything. And that, I think, is a challenge. But, like, to your point, my grandfather has stopped watching NASCAR because it became too complicated at times. Like, tire compounds, playoffs, all these things. And do I wish NASCAR would simplify it a little bit and go back to kind of what we did the old days? Yes. What I tell people now is just look at it a race at a time. If you're worried about from the gambling and the strategy standpoint, hey, Sean and I have that for you. We're neck deep in it. And let yourself enjoy the race. I mean, I've seen you in those go-karts running around, Ray, and as well as I do, it's not easy to be fast. Like, you think you're fast, but then you go and look and you're like, wait, how does someone have the exact same car and be faster, right? That the more you do it, and Ray, I'll be the first to tell you, I could never pick up a pitch off a pitcher's hand. I bet you could. You could tell me the spin and everything else, and that's just something I could never, ever conceptualize. I could see a white speck coming at me, and that's the best I can do. So it does get that way, but I think sometimes we as analysts and even the TV and radio folks make it more complicated than it has to be. I mean, let's be honest here. Racing is really one thing. Go from point A to point B, or that distance, as fast as possible or as quick as possible. You don't have to be the fastest car, but you got to be the first one to get there, right? That's all it is. Sometimes I think we just make it too complicated.
Talking NASCAR with Rich Miletto here, Fantasy Bosco on social media. You ever seen the movie Final Destination? You've seen it, right? With the with the track. I just for some reason thought of that. That wasn't something that I was planning to talk about. But if you don't like racing, watch Final Destination, where the track goes haywire. That'll get you into racing. I don't remember which one it was. There's like 5 of them. You have to check that out. But let's go back to this weekend. And you mentioned DFS and you mentioned the track and all these things. Let's get into it a little bit. Like, talk us through a little bit about DFS lineups, like roster construction this weekend. Like, there's a whole bunch of moving parts here. Talk to us about kind of what you're focused on from a DFS angle.
So, the last time we were on, we kind of did an overlooping idea of DFS and racing, right? Like, we kind of talked about the basics of you need dominators, you need place differentials, that sort of thing. And there's different approaches depending on the tracks we're at. Last week, for example, we were at Bristol Motor Speedway. Bristol Motor Speedway is a half mile. There are 500 laps that we race at Bristol. Conversely, here, this is a very large track. We're only going to do 67, 68 scheduled laps. It's a big difference. Doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're scoring points on a DFS standpoint of 0.25 points per lap led, well, someone could lead half the laps at Bristol. That's 250 times 0.25. That's a big number. You could lead all laps this week at 67 of them at 0.25. And that's a very, very small number relative to what we had last week at Bristol. So What's interesting, though, like we see at the short tracks like a Bristol or Phoenix, it's not uncommon to get 1 or 2 or even 3 drivers that really kind of dominate the event. Last year's Cup race, because of the excess cautions, we ran 75 laps. 69 of those laps, though, Ray, were led by 2 drivers. That's it. Now, you look at the scoring, though, you go and look at the top 10. Well, in addition to those 2 drivers that obviously scored a lot of points from the dominator side, we had 3 different drivers or 2 different drivers inside the top 10 that started 30th or back. Those drivers on place differential points alone picked up over 20 points. So that leader that led that massive amount of 40 laps at a quarter a point is still far less than what we see from someone starting in the back, moving up to the front. Now, that seems simple, right? We just want to find fast guys or fast drivers that start in the back. It's not that easy, right? We'll have practice. We'll have qualifying. What you're kind of hoping for, honestly, if you want an angle, is the drivers you were eyeballing and have a good history that run well, they have a problem in qualifying. They get off track, they overdrive the turn somewhere, and all of a sudden, the guy that's expecting to start top 10, now starting 30th because they got off track on their one qualifying run. That's what you're kind of hoping for, right? So we use a lot of driver history and whatnot to kind of target these drivers, but I'll be the first to admit, the road racing is almost, I don't want to say the most predictable, but it's also the most difficult because we have to be much more precise in what we hit. We have to hit those lap leaders and fast lap folks, but we also have to hit the 1 or 2 guys that are starting in the back and to come forward. If you don't hit on that dominator or 2, and you don't hit on the 1 or 2 guys that make up those place differential points, you're not going to cash in DFS.
A basic question. You talk about 500 laps here. You talk about 68, 69 laps there. What's the difference in terms of the distance? And I ask that because, like, how many pit stops do you make? If it's the same size, right? You think, oh, we only make 1 pit stop. Is that something that you factor into, the fact that we're doing less laps, therefore there's fewer pit stops? Or is the track such a way that the pit stop angle is similar to something that's more wide open?
That is one of the best questions I've ever got, Ray. So the distances vary a little bit. They have misnomers because you'll constantly see the Pennzoil 400 or the Firecracker 500, right? Some of it's a misnomer. We run 500 laps at Bristol. It's a half-mile track. We only do 250 miles. At Daytona, it's a 2.5-mile track. We do 200 laps, and it's 500 miles. We go to Circuit of Americas here, COTA, and I don't have it off the top of my head, but I want to say it's 3 to 4 miles on distance of the track. Maybe it's a little less than that. So they call it the truck race is the XPEL 225. I believe that's 225 kilometers, not 225 miles. I'll have to double check that. They play these weird games, okay? But to your point, depending on the track, depending on distance, absolutely pit windows are different. You know, at Daytona, we're only going to go 30, 40-ish laps. Bristol, we're going to do a lot more laps than that. Here at COTA, we're only going to do the fuel mileage relatively stays the same, but obviously the laps where we pit changes, right, because of the distance. So at the road courses, unfortunately, with the stage cautions, what you used to see is drivers would pit, say, 5-6 laps into a race. Seems crazy, right? They would do that and space it out, so they only had to do 1 or 2 more pit stops the whole rest of the event. The theory being exactly where you're going. If I can do this race on 1 less pit stop than everybody else, I give myself an advantage, right? Because that's time off the track that I'm not covering ground, that now I could go ahead and make up ground because I'm not the guy pitting. So unfortunately with the stage cautions, it's not quite the same, but absolutely, Ray, pitch strategy, especially at road courses, has always been a big deal.
We're early in the week here still, right? Friday and everything. And I know that you've written and talked about this in the past, that sometimes you like to take advantage, Rich, of early lines that you don't necessarily agree with. How are we playing that angle of things as we head into this race this weekend? What can you share with our listeners?
So there seems to always be about 1 driver in each series that drives me nuts. A couple of weeks ago, I pushed Roger Carruth at 80-1 hard. I said his line was way off. His pricing on DK was way off based on what he did in lower level equipment last year and where his pricing and odds ended up at the end of the year versus where they started him this year with a better team. I said they were wrong. We get to qualifying, it goes from 80-1 to 16-1, and the guy goes on to win the race. So I always like to try to find some of these lines that just seem off. I'm not putting big money on it, Ray, but literally $1 or $2. I mean, at 100-1, $1 pays you $100, right? At the 80-1, that $1 paid, that would have paid for your Guru membership for the year, right? I mean, it did in one foul swoop. So I've got a couple of drivers. Nick Sanchez in the Truck Series really jumps out at me at 2,200 or 22-1. He ran well in the road race. He doesn't have a lot of road racing background, which is kind of why Vegas is off of him. But they have a partnership at Rev Racing with the Spire Trucks, which is where Kyle Busch is at, Roger Crew. We've seen some success already. At 22-1, I just feel like he's off. He should be much closer to that 12 to 14-1 type of range, and he's not. So he's on my radar, especially here at qualifying, because I expect his number to come down. Sammy Smith in the Xfinity Series. Last year it was a different team, but he ran 100% of his laps in the top 15. You look at the other guys that are priced around him, the Cole Custards and Justin Allgaiers and whatnot. There's no reason Sammy Smith, who's in the same equipment as Ben Rhodes, same equipment as Ty Majeski, who are at like plus 1,000. There's no reason he shouldn't be up there, especially since he's run well at these types of tracks in the past. I also like Sage Karam at 10,000 plus 10,000, 100-1. The last time he ran for Sam Hunt Racing was at Road America, where it was an epic finish of a race. The last 4 laps with Sam Mayer, who won. So again, these are just kind of low-level novelty bets that I like throwing a buck at. The one that really catches me though in the Cup Series is Kyle Busch. He's at 15-1. He's kind of ways down for all the favorites. If you go back and look at his history, and it's not just in this car with this team that's been really solid. Prior history with Joe Gibbs in the old car, he's run better than people give him credit for on these street courses or road courses. Sean and I talked about it on the podcast. We are both kind of flabbergasted that Kyle is plus 1,500 or 15-1 right now. So if you want to look at some cheap bets, a buck here, a buck there type of thing, those are some names I really like so far this weekend.
Again, you've got Sean and Rich on the Race Guru Thunder Hour. You can find that at youtube.com/Athlete Plus Network on the website as well, fantasyguru.com. He's talking to us here about all this stuff. And I want to ask you this because, again, to me, this is Greek. And I took Greek in college and I didn't do very well, by the way. You've mentioned Cup Series. You've mentioned the Craftsman Trucks. You've mentioned the Xfinity Series. Like, there's all this kind of stuff. If someone is new to this, where do they go? Like, do you just do straight NASCAR? Are there better odds because there's less interest in this? You know what I mean? Talk us through the different versions here, because it can be very confusing for people. Rich, I just want to, play what do you recommend to people if they're just getting started?
So if you're a football guy, I recommend just focusing on Cup. For me, the part of the draw for it was consistency, right? I'm used to building lineups Sunday morning, Saturday night, that sort of thing. So the Cup Series really kind of fits well into it. Not to mention, you have way more options, okay? DraftKings offers contests for trucks and Xfinity. FanDuel doesn't, okay? You go to different sports books. Not all sports books will give you all the options for trucks, Xfinity, and so on. I talk to the wife all the time. We can get lines offshore for Cup, top 10, top 5, all these different options. When it comes to the trucks, the Craftsman Truck Series or Xfinity, they don't exist. Now, I cover kind of exclusively trucks. I think there is a bit of an edge at times. It varies. The way I explain NASCAR is kind of like baseball. AAA, AA, single A, right? Major League Baseball. They're all kind of feeder series to the next level and you work your way up. That's how NASCAR wants it set up. It would be kind of ARCA, which is something people don't really talk about. You're not going to find contests on. It's for the nut jobs like me that watch all racing things. But you'll go from like ARCA to Craftsman Truck Series to Xfinity to Cup. That's kind of the natural progression. You'll see some really talented people skip a level or so, but that's kind of the progression. So you see a lot of the overlap. I take pride in finding these guys at the ARCA Series and the Truck Series so that by the time we get to Cup, we already know a lot about them. One great example is Zane Smith this week, and he's really cheap for DFS. He's got long odds. He has dominated this racetrack in the Truck Series. That matters. Yes, it's different equipment, different tires, all these things, and that's going to have an impact. But you can't deny the fact that this young man, to your point, has a knack for this type of track, whether it be the type of asphalt, the type of cornering, whatever it may be. All these things kind of go into it. So if you're just getting into it, I would recommend start with Cup. It's going to be a little more crazy, frustrating, but it's also got the most information. It's also got the most access to bets, to gambling, to DFS, to all those things. If Sundays aren't really a timing thing and you like to really kind of sit down and veg out on a Friday night, Truck Series is where it's at. I wouldn't go too crazy on it. You're definitely going to have to do more homework. You're definitely going to have to lean on folks like Sean and I, because there's just not a lot of info if you're not following it on a week-to-week basis.
And you can't answer this, but I'm going to ask you anyway, Rich. I assume there's a package you can buy for your cable provider, right? But there's also some of these like channel, 780 or something, like channel people aren't. Is there a spot? There must be a package again, but is there a spot if people want to get more involved? Like, would you recommend A or B, or is that a dumb question?
No, it's not a dumb question. So actually, NASCAR makes it really difficult to watch, to be honest with you. And it's going to get more difficult in 2025. You're seeing it with the NFL, multiple streaming platforms. Hey, from this month to this month, it's on this channel. Like next year for the first half, it's Fox. And then there's 5 races with TNT. And then there's 5 races with Prime, or vice versa, and so on. I had to just up the TV package recently so I could get FS2, so I could watch practice, because I think it matters. In addition to looking at times of practice, I like to listen to the interviews. You will be surprised what drivers and crew chiefs and teams will spill the beans on. Like, yeah, we got a top 5 car today. I don't know if we can hang with the 8 car, though. Okay, well, that tells me everyone's looking at the 8 car as the best car or the car to beat, so we better take note of it. So I paid up for a lot of that. As far as like subscriptions and whatnot, honestly, Ray, your best bet, fantasyguru.com. I stand by the information that Sean and I provide. We go very in depth. I'll put our content up against any other content provider that's covering NASCAR. Mike Dempsey just called me the other day and said, Rich, you love football, fine. He goes, but dude, you really know and live this NASCAR. He goes, there's just not much out there. He goes, I'd put you on top of anybody out there. So that was a big compliment coming from Mike Dempsey. If you know him, he doesn't just blow smoke. So that was a big compliment. But go to fantasyguru.com. Otherwise, NASCAR.com's got great info. They've got a free fantasy league you can do there. I'm not a huge fan of it, but there's a free one you can do there. Other than that, jski.com is just a free website, has a lot of basics, tire compounds, entry lists. That's a great outlet. It's a little bit cleaner to use than the NASCAR.com page. But other than that, check out our info on fantasyguru.com. And really, we pull all the data. Sean and I have media credentials for NASCAR, so we pull all the data that NASCAR releases to the entire media group, which is driver ratings, fastest laps, all that information. So outside of tuning into folks like us, it's a pretty tough dig, Ray.
I don't know what to do with my hands. We're talking about interviews. Come on, Will Ferrell. I don't know what to do.
I don't do it with my hands.
Yeah, anyway, for those people that
Talladega Nights, man. I'm game.
All right, so we've got the Race Guru Thunder Hour. The article's up already over at fantasyguru.com. You can see there on the screen, and if you can't see it on the screen because of where you're listening to this, get the all-in package. We call it the NBA all-in package, but it's all the sports. It's NBA, NHL, NASCAR racing. So it's not just NASCAR racing, MMA, PGA. All of it's one package. You get the DFS and the wagering for all of it, which obviously will include what we're talking about here with NASCAR. Rich, I think it's been a great visit. Thank you so much for this. Folks, check out the Race Guru Thunder Hour. You can find it linked below here. You can find it obviously at the website as well, and at youtube.com/@Elite Plus Network, and read that article so you can have some success this weekend. Rich, thanks for your visit. Really appreciate it. We'll do it again soon.
Really appreciate it, Ray. Thanks a lot, man. Love the baseball stuff. Let's keep it going.
You got it. Thanks, buddy. You have a good one yourself. Good luck this weekend.
Thank you, too.
All right, later, Rich. Rich Mileto, you can follow him again on social media, by the way, at Fantasy Bosco. So can check him out there. Okay, so a little bit more baseball before we end the show today. We're talking Nationals. You can see it on the screen there. Let's start out with our player profile of Joey Gallo. First base, outfield eligible. Yeah, we know the story with Joey Gallo. He's basically Kyle Schwarber Jr., right? Batting average stinks. On-base percentage is pretty good. Powers the baseball. Gallo, like Schwarber, is a player, if you roster them, you have to construct your team in a certain way because they have deficiencies. Most directly, the batting average. And you can see it there. It's really pretty interesting. At least I find it pretty interesting. I assume you do too. That, the last 2 years, Kyle Schwarber has killed it, right? And look at Joey Gallo the last 2 years. His batting average 168, which is below the 207 of Schwarber. But in 742 plate appearances, he's gone 40, 87, 87. And that's the thing with Gallo. You get a guy who's much better defensively, who can qualify at a couple positions than Gallo. He's going to hurt you in batting average because his strikeout rate is catastrophic. He's not a good play in points leagues because of that fact. He's going to rack up 200 strikeouts if he plays the full season for the Nationals. There's always a chance that he ends up losing playing time with Cruz or Wood come up because they move the lineup around. But he's got legitimate power, and he costs nothing on draft day. Could he hit 200 with 38 home runs this year? Yeah, he could. If you're in a home run only league, we're doing those again at Archie Sports. If you're in a home run only league, maybe Joey Gallo's a name, depending upon the size of your, whether you're doing a 4 or 10 teamer. Joey Gallo's got legitimate power. He's slated to play first base right now. Again, playing time could dry up. He could always be traded, but he has legitimate power. That part of his game will always play. Joey Meneses is going to be at the DH. Now, obviously, he's played first base. He's going to be the DH this year for the Nationals. And depending upon your setup, and because, again, all are different, he played 19 games at first base. So if you have a 20-game eligibility rule heading into the season, he's only UT eligible, which dings him a little bit. Meneses, came out and was really good his first season in 56 games. We talked about him coming into last year saying, look, he's not that good. He should be effective, but he's not that good. He drove in 89 runs, hit 275. Pretty quiet 89 RBI season for him. The issue really is that he's not a power hitter, right? And we've seen this. Though he hit 13 home runs in his first season, he only hit 13 home runs last year in 154 games. He just doesn't lift the ball. His launch angle is 9%. So another 15-75 season kind of as a baseline with the ability to have the numbers be better than that. It all depends on, the health of him and, quite frankly, the health of the team. You look at this team, they brought in Jesse Winker. They brought in Joey Gallo. They brought in Nick Senzel. They brought in all these veterans. If these veterans stay healthy, the lineup can be pretty solid. If they don't, so Meneses might end up being the last man standing kind of thing, if that makes sense, right? In terms of a run-producing perspective, in terms of driving in runs. The negative right now is he's UT only in a lot of setups. James Wood, Dylan Cruz are the two names, and you've seen it in spring that both guys are going to see the big leagues in 2024. It's a matter of when. And I was just talking about this. You look at this outfield right now. Lane Thomas is going to play every day after his great season last year. Then it's Jesse Winker and Victor Robles. And it's like, Robles is amazingly not even 27 yet. But, he's really worn his welcome out here. He's never developed. He was a better prospect, according to most scouting services, than Juan Soto. Yeah, that's true. That actually happened. Hasn't developed that way. There's always a chance he loses playing time quickly if he struggles to start the season. In the case of Winker, can he stay healthy? They did sign Eddie Rosario, so they brought another veteran in to give them more time. If Winker can't stay healthy or produce, if Robles can't stay healthy or produce, they bought themselves some time with Eddie Rosario and Joey Gallo. But we're going to see James Wood. We're going to see Dylan Cruz. We've seen James Wood really impress in spring, and I think the idea was we'd see him really late in the season. Now there's some thought we see him in the first half. He's impressed to the point where we've accelerated his timeline to the big leagues substantially. He's obviously 6'6", 6'7", whatever he is. That guy could go 30-20. He's kind of in the O'Neal Cruz mold, right? He's not just a big dude that slugs. He's an athlete. Really impressive thus far. Dylan Cruz got one of the best hit tools of any player in the minors. Doesn't have the power or speed component to match Wood. But while Wood, might be a 270 hitter, Cruz could be a 300 hitter, right? He just hits everything on the line. Both those guys, again, will be seen this year. Should you draft them in a 15-team mixed league right at the end? I've seen a lot of people taking them in 12ers. Depends, man. It depends how your league handles the IL. It depends how active people are on the FAB and the free agent market and all that. It's always risky to take a chance on a guy, not knowing when we're going to see him because the injuries have already started, as we've talked about a lot here on the show. Check out the rankings at fantasyguru.com to see which guy I prefer for 2024. Finally, before we talk about our up and our down, MacKenzie Gore. MacKenzie Gore, for those people that didn't care, didn't know, don't remember, MacKenzie Gore was, when he was with the Padres, looked at by a lot of people, kind of like AJ Puck, looked at as arguably the number one starting pitching left-handed prospect in baseball. And things went haywire for Gore. We had some injuries, we had the COVID year, and it's taken him a lot longer to even get to the big leagues than a lot of people thought. And it's taken him a long time to really establish himself. I guess he established himself last year. He threw 136 innings, had 151 strikeouts. But we saw last year an issue that we've seen with him for a while now, and that's an inability to consistently control the strike zone. The strikeouts will be there. He's going to give you a strikeout an inning, but there are just times where he loses the strike zone, and that's not what was anticipated with him because he's an athletic guy. The hope was that he would lock in his mechanics, which has been a struggle for him. He would lock that in, and the control would greatly improve. At this point, he's kind of scattershot. I think the expectation with the Nationals is that we get 150 innings out of this guy, which then brings us 175 strikeouts maybe. With the walk issues and with the home run issue, and that is something as well. He gives up a good deal of fly balls, so home runs are going to be there from time to time with him. There's a concern that the Nationals have a pitcher on their hands, and we would have a pitcher on our hands in the fantasy game that has some ratio issues. So he's someone you draft late because of the strikeout potential, but you have to plan on the ratios, ERA and WHIP, being basically league average. So it's really a workload strikeout play with him, with the hope that I'm wrong about that he locks in the control because he locks in the mechanics. We just haven't seen that consistently. Moving up for the Nationals is, again, James Wood. We talked about that. We were thinking late in the year we'd see him this year. Now we're thinking early in the season. He's been fantastic here in spring. Going down is Victor Robles. He's got speed, but even when he's in this lineup, he's likely to hit the bottom of the lineup. So he's going to have plate appearances limited. He's a fascinating guy because, again, let me pull this up to verify this. I want to get the numbers right. What is it? His career best for home runs is 17. His career best for steals is 28. In 2019, he went 17-28. First full season in the big leagues, 17-28. Scored 86 runs. And ever since, it's been Toilet City. It really has. He turned 27 until May. There's always a chance he's still 27, but really the bat looks like a wet noodle. He just hasn't hit. He's definitely moving down because of the ascension of guys like Cruz and Wood. So there we go, folks. There's our last team review. We've finished it. We've completed it all. We've gone around the horn, if you will. Thanks for listening to the show today. We'll be back on Monday, again, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to listen to on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, the Elite Plus show, myself and Justin Fensterman, Monday through Thursday, 8 to 10 p.m. Next week, we get baseball. So we've been doing a lot of hockey and basketball, NCAA as well on the show because it's a live update show. We're basically just zipping around everywhere talking about what's going on. We'll start to add baseball next year. So instead of watching ESPN or trying to find it on Baseball Network, tune on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio from 8 to 10 Monday through Thursday. We'll be talking baseball on the show. There's also the Elite Sports Show with Jeff Manns, Monday through Friday. That's 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm on with him on Wednesdays, so you can find me then and there. You can find me here, Fantasy Sports Daily, Monday through Friday at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Get the all-in package that we talked about, MMA, PGA, NHL, NASCAR, racing, basketball, if I didn't mention all of it, the all-in package, all included DFS and wagering. Get the football package. It's $19.99 for the offseason. All the offseason coverage of player movement and all of that, as well as looking ahead to the draft, player profiles and all of that. And then finally, join us right now. Again, let me look at this as we're sitting here. Let's see if the leagues have been filled while we're talking. There's still some openings here. Chris Rose, Scott Bondro, Sandro Anello, Phil Backert, Rob Brink, myself. Get in a Homer Showdown League with one of us at RT Sports, rtsports.com/fantasyguru-baseball. We'll even consider adding some best ball leagues to that. I think we'll consider it. We'll see if we can make it work. I'm already in 4 of those leagues, so if you missed them, maybe we'll add another one here before the season begins. But head over there right now. We've got promo codes for discount. We got promo codes for deposit matches with RT Sports. Check it out, rtsports.com/fantasyguru-baseball. I am Ray Flowers. This has been Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com. Have a great draft weekend. Again, the draft book will be updated. The rankings will be updated so you can have that success this weekend with us and fantasyguru.com.